Friends, believe it or not, it was over 7 years ago, on July 8th of 2009, that you and I started on this journey of an ordinary car guy in extraordinary adventures. And now, over 570 episodes later, we're starting season 7. So here at the old show, we decided to do something a bit special and feature the 2017, actually, I don't even know if it's a 2017, could be a 2016, but whatever it is an Aston Martin, and not just any Aston Martin, it is the V12 Vantage S. So let's kick off season 7 with a special tech review, and let's start where we always start, the engine. Perhaps it's because we're starting season 7, but I'm feeling particularly nostalgic today. So do you guys remember, it was like 2 years ago, I can't believe it's been that long, when we drove the convertible version of this, the one with the manual transmission? Well, that one, it had a measly 8 cylinders, and granted it was powerful, but in today's day and age, was it the most powerful car? Not exactly. Here, this is a completely different perspective. No, we need to start over here, because as cool as a 12-cylinder engine is, this is more about the old Detroit muscle car trick. You take the engine from your largest car and you put it in your smallest car. This is a trick that we've loved for the past, 60 years. So how does it translate over there? Well, it's kind of 2 columns really to think about this. There is a run-of-the-mill, if there is such a thing, V12 Vantage S, which is a measly 571 horsepower, which comes in at a rather aggressive 6650 RPM. But then that one, well, it's not a run-of-the-mill V12 Vantage S. It is a sport pack, which amongst other things, it blesses it with more power. So that one's 576 horsepower, also comes in at 6650. Then there's the torque. That also changes. So the run-of-the-mill V12 Vantage S, that one is only 457 pound-feet of torque, which comes in at 5,500 RPM. Well, this one changes as well, almost about 10. It's 465 pound-feet of torque, 5,500 RPM. Somewhat aggressive, but remember, a 12-cylinder, they don't rev very high. Then, have I told you about the transmission? This one, anything you want, as long as it's an automatic. And granted, it's actually a very good automatic. Remember, we drove it the 8-speed in that one over there. But we don't want to talk about automatics. We want to talk about manual transmissions, people. And that one, I want to say that I've kind of seen religion, because it's been a very, 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 very long time since I've driven a dog-leg manual transmission, which that has, and it's 7 forward gears. So think about the math here. All that horsepower, 7 forward gears, and 3 pedals. Then there's the whole driving dynamics thing. So that's another thing that's been pilfered from other Aston Martin cars. So number one, look at the suspension setup. It's double wishbones front and rear. But more importantly, or specific to this, the carbon ceramic rotors have been pilfered from these and brought down over there. In the front, I mean, it's like bigger than the wheels of my first car. 15.7-inch diameter rotors in the front. What is it, 398 millimeters. And then 360 millimeters in rear, so what's 14.1? Let's just say very large. Then there's another thing about this sport pack, and it's the wheels. They are lightweight graphite wheels, or so they tell me. Now, pay no attention to the jackass over there that's just going on about bullets and numbers of engines and brakes and that kind of stuff. Aston Martins, well, engineering does not an Aston Martin make alone. It's also what's inside as well. Now granted, yes, we drive these and get excited about them because they are fast. They make lots of noise. Basically, they piss off your neighbors. And of course, they are in James Bond movies. But there's also the interior fittings. Now, do you guys remember this whole nostalgia thing we talk about? Do you remember when we drove that incredibly stunning brown? I know, stunning and brown usually don't go together, but that brown Rapide S back, again, it was like 2 years ago. We did a lot of Aston Martins 2 years ago, didn't we? And that car, beautiful exterior. The interior was black, wasn't very pretty in terms of the color, but it had this stunning suede everywhere. You could smell the suede. Well, it wasn't just the engine over there that was pilfered and given to the smaller car. It was all the suede out of this, and I'm sure you could spec that with suede, and you could spec all of these with suede if you pay enough money. But anyway, it's more suede here as standard. It's now over there, and again, it kind of goes with that sport pack we talked about, where it's not just more power or other stuff like that. It also gives you suede on the steering wheel, suede on the headliner, and suede all over the dash. And if that weren't enough, there's suede on the steering column. So you sit in that thing and you are overcome with just the smell. It's just an experience of suede. And anyway, you lose your train of thought with so much suede. But basically, it's pilfered from this car here, even kind of the back too. So in summary, what do we got? Well, if you remember that Vantage we drove 2 years ago, that was a special car because you look at all of these, they have been replaced effectively because the DB11 is now out. And so Aston Martin will move most of this line to that platform, including this car. And I had told you in that episode, I pontificated greatly about it, but we would look back on this car, it was really that one there, but we would look back on this car and say, you know what, this is the way a car really should be. Or do you remember those days? Now it's taking what we drove back then and greatly intensifying its personality. I don't want to give too much away before our full first drive review that we're going to do on this. Sadly, we will go back to 2D for that one. But I will say, join me in that episode because I promise you will see religion with this vehicle. And with that, I want to turn this around to you guys because yes, we have a special occasion here to kick off our Season 7 by amassing, $1.3 million in Aston Martins. And usually I like to leave you with questions of, well, what would you choose? But in no instance have we had every car in the question here in 360. So I am going to make this a very simple question for you. Of all of these Aston Martins you see here, which one would you choose? Now, there's a bit of a catch to it. You really can't have this. You see, Aston Martin, they only made 100 of these. The only choice you had was color, and do you want a hardtop or a roadster? And before they even took a bolt out to build one of these things, all of them were sold. So effectively, you need to talk one of those lucky 100 people out of this car. So the question is very simple. Which one would you choose? Why would you choose it, and what region of the world do you hail from? And you know what? I'm gonna tack on like a part B here. What would you do for one of the 100 lucky owners of this to talk them out of this car? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our fancy new mobile application, which you could download for free from Apple, iTunes, and Google Play, and will play a huge role in Season 7. And in Season 6, if you remember, we started on 5, count them 5 international airlines, and we continue that in Season 7. And number two, I want to leave you with a fun fact. So I pointed out a lot of the family resemblance and some of the bits that came from other cars to make this car here. But the one thing I did not point out was the wings. And I recently found out these are not made by Aston Martin, because it would stand to reason they do all the hand building of the cars in Gaydon or used to be Newport Pagnell. They would have done this there for years. Actually, it comes from the jewelry district in Birmingham, so like the Midlands of the UK. And the folks that have been making these things for years, handmade, is a company called Thomas Fattorini. Thomas Fattorini. My apologies if I have mispronounced the name, but they have been a going concern since 1827, and they don't just make badges like this or trophies, they also make swords, really. Now, before I sign off here, I want to say a huge thank you from all of us here at MotoMan for joining us for the past 7 years, and looking forward to having you join us in the future. So until I see you for the full first drive review of this, or perhaps another episode in Season 7 or seasons beyond that, I say, bis später.